is going on, YouTube? My name is Upper Class, coming to you in the name of The Art of Sampling. If you don't know what The Art of Sampling is, The Art of Sampling is a Facebook group consisting of musicians that enjoy making music with samples. So, if you want to join, look at the link in the description. Today is the third video, and I've received a lot of questions about what I could do next, a lot of suggestions. And many people said they would like me to see how I actually make my beats. The first two videos were kind of just going into one certain part of production. So today we are going to look at my beat, which is called Night Shift. It's one of my better ones actually, and we're going to look at a lot of production techniques that I use to make this beat from start to finish. So this is what the end result sounded like. I kind of like that one, and since I've gotten a lot of questions about how I actually make a beat from start to finish, I'm just gonna make something like behind the beat. So usually when I make beats, I start doing them in Maschine because I only use a Maschine Micro. Many people think I use an SP404, but it's not true. So in Maschine, I usually set up the basics of the beats I make, and then I transfer all the audio tracks over to FL Studio, where I mix everything and where everything comes together, kind of. You can hear what the beat sounded like before I exported it into FL Studio. This is what the beat sounded like when I just made the basics. It already sounds kind of good. It sounds very basic, and of course didn't do any mixing for this part. So let's take a look what the sample looks like. It's a guitar sample by I don't know how to pronounce his name. It's Lenny Bro, and the slices were kind of deleted, but it's pretty basic. It's just four chops of a guitar sample, which when playing in solo sound like this. Still some bass. And then there's some variations going on. The kick is also pretty basic. It's actually one of the kicks from my drum kit. So it's two kicks. The one kick is my, as I would call it, the main kick. And the only thing that makes a difference to the second one is that there's more compression and more saturation going on than the first one, because I want the second one, which is kind of groovy, to be a little bit more subtle. So it's a little bit quieter. Let's talk about the snare. The snare consists of two sounds. I actually intended it to have be consisting of 3 sounds, but now it's only 2. Some kind of vinyl crackle and another sound, which is the actual snare sound, which sounds like this. And then there's some vinyl crackle. I don't even know why I did that, but I kind of liked it when I did it. So the snare just it has some kind of transient modification where the sound would be a little shorter than the original sample, and there's some filtering going on. I cut off a lot of the high end of the snare and did some compression in the end. Compression is actually, I've made a video on that, but it's a great tool to expand your drums. You can get so many things out of your drum sounds just by using compression. And turning off the filtering and the compression, it would sound like this. And I kind of like how it sounded this way. It sounds very balanced. The head sound a little different than you would usually expect. I kind of used a head loop from the Krupp drum kit. That one's actually free. You can download it somewhere on the internet. And the loop itself sounds like this. And I've used two versions of that, which sound a little different, making things a little bit more exciting and not as repetitive. And then there's some filtering, cutting off the high end, and some compression as well, just to make it a little bit more present. So, and there's some bass, pretty basic sine wave bass that I sampled and used my machine to actually play notes. So all together, sounds like this. Note how I placed the second kick just slightly before the new beginning of the new beat, where you can make your beats sound much more groovy and more natural when you do that. It has a kind of bumpy feel. So let's go over to FL Studio and take a look on some mixing and production techniques that I used. Okay, so here we are in FL Studio, and this is what the beat sounds like. It sounds like the final version, because I do every final step in FL Studio. Basically, it's just using different plugins. It's nothing that you couldn't do if you just would use FL Studio, because I see a lot of people thinking FL Studio is kind of not the real thing, but I personally tried other digital audio workstations and it didn't work for me. So the first plugin is, unfortunately, it costs a little, but it's called RC20 Retro Color, and it's doing magic to your sounds. You can use vinyl crackle and pitch modulation, different kinds of compressing, and that's really cool, but you actually don't need it to get a good sound. It's just like the top, it's like the icing on the cake. And there's some EQ going on. I just boosted the high end a little bit, so the kind of noisy thing sounds a little bit louder. You notice when I turn off the retro color, then there won't be any noise on the sample, or almost no noise. The original recording had quite some noise on it, and I added a little bit of vinyl crackle to it. Then there's some compression going on. The plugin is called Rough Rider, and I used it like 5 years ago and never touched it. And now that I make lo-fi hip-hop and not stupid drum and bass and dubstep beats like Skrillex, it actually is kind of useful because it has a very natural and organic sound that it gives to especially your drums. Usually I don't use it on my samples, but it really does good things to your drums. And it's free. So there's some compression going on. I'm not a fan of trying to explain how compression works in a technical matter, because all you can do to understand compression is play around with it and find out what it does. That's my personal opinion on it. I've also done quite the same thing to the kick, except for that I didn't use any compression but sidechain compression. I've already explained sidechain compression in another video, so check it out if you want to understand how that works. Basically what it does is, when the kick comes in, the sample and the bass get quieter, just for a few milliseconds, so we are making room for the kick. And it sounds pretty obvious, but it's very important that you mix all of your drums, samples, and etc. separately. Because if I would, for example, if I would decide to put my kick, my snare, and my hat on the same mixer track, and I would want to give the kick a little boost in the bass frequency range, then I would also boost the bass of the snare and the hi-hat, which would end up sounding kind of stupid. Doing that is very, very important, so you can mix every sound on its own and get a clean result. So I did quite a few things to the snare, which is some bit crushing. It's a free plugin. I've also gone over that in my first tutorial. It just reduces the sound quality artificially, so you get a little bit of a more gritty sound from the snare, which sounds like this. So there's some EQ going on as well. I just cut off the lows because the snare wouldn't need the very low frequencies. It would just end up taking a lot of room away from the kick and the bass, who actually need the low frequencies. I turned off the compressor probably because it was a little bit too heavy. And oh yeah, I completely forgot about that. What I love to do on my drums is to use low passing and resonance. Especially when you're making lo-fi, it can really even things out and give it a lot more natural feel. Like it's almost like it's supposed that the drums are made to be played together with the sample. So I'm just gonna play the snare without low passing and resonance. And now with it. Sounds much better. Being played together without low passing. Turned it on now. It sounds much more like the snare is actually supposed to fit into the rest of the beat, which is very important if you want to get a consistent sound and really want to keep one certain vibe. So pretty much the same things going on with the hi-hats. Bit crushing to make it sound a little bit more gritty, and low passing and resonance in order to do the same thing that I did to the snare, cutting off some high end, making it sound a little bit more analog and organic. And the bass is pretty much it's not as important when it comes to mixing. You just gotta take care that it's not too loud, and take care of sidechain compression, so it doesn't interfere with your kick sound. Because when you play kick and bass at the same time, you're very likely to get some kind of distortion or clipping, which wouldn't sound good in the end. Okay, let's take a look on the master channel. One thing that I always do on my master track, the first plugin that I put into it is a parametric EQ. You can do that in any other digital audio workstation as well. And I cut off everything that's below 20 Hz and everything that is above 18 kHz, which is just some very basic thing you should always do with your mix, because you don't need any frequencies below 20 Hz and you don't need any frequencies above 18 kHz. It's just gonna occupy space in the mix that you wouldn't need. And there's some retro color going on. It's basically just some kind of tape compression that I added to the beat. You can also use another plugin that basically does the same. It's called, where do you have it? There it is. It's Ferric TDS. It's working like tape compression, where you can increase compression, use tape saturation. It pretty much does the same thing for $0. So we have a multi-band compressor. If you don't know what multi-band compression is, it's the same thing like normal compression, but you can divide your whole mix into different bands, which in this case is the low frequencies, the mid frequencies, and the high frequencies. On my master track, I can still do changes separately to my, for example, my hi-hat and my the high ends of the guitar, and then the mid-range, and the bass. I reduced the dynamics of the bass frequencies a little, increasing the volume of the more quieter sounds, so I achieved that the bass has a little bit more power, because it's not as powerful as the kick. But when the kick comes in, usually it would go like straight up like this, but it goes like that, because I don't want to overpower the bass of the kick, because that would result in unnecessary volume that I can just compress a little. So in the end I would be able to make the whole track sound a little bit louder because I could increase the volume of the whole track. This is something I always like to do as well on my master track. I use low pass and resonance, which kind of puts it a little bit more together. You can also do the same thing by using parametric EQ, where I just cut off some of the high end. And then there's a classic master limiter. It's kind of taking the easy way. It's just going to limit your track and make the quieter things sound a little bit louder, and making the loud elements of your track sound a little bit quieter. Now I've been using this for like a year and I'm very happy with it. It's free, just like Classic Compressor, which is a very good compression plugin where you have a little bit more options than just this one level knob. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, check out the Art of Sampling Facebook group and my SoundCloud in the description. You can also check out the link which leads you to my lo-fi drum kits. If you enjoy beefing up your drum collection a little bit, then check it out. It's a lot of drum sounds for a fair price. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.